To defeat an enemy, you must know them. Not just their battle tactics, but their history, philosophy, art. Welcome to the Chiss Ascendancy podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to
The Chiss Ascendancy.
episode 49.
49, which is fitting because we're amongst where the 49ers would have been.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. We are actually shooting right now in Northern California. So we're on vacation and we're at my in-laws' house. But I've got two kids. My brother-in-law has a kid. And everyone else in the house is also noisy. So we decided to shoot in the van. So this is kind of cool. We're on location. So today, episode 49, we're talking about duos of Star Wars.
Yeah.
The best Star Wars duos. And so we thought about teams, but that could just be crazy how many things we come up with. So we went with just duos, just pairs. And so before we jump into that, a little bit of news. First thing is, there's a turkey right outside this car as we speak that almost attacked us about 10 minutes ago.
He's vicious.
And so if you hear a, it's not me, it's the turkey.
There you go.
See? And then secondly, in the world of Mandalorian, season 2 is wrapped up, and remember last year they did Disney Gallery, where they went through the volume and animatronics and all that kind of stuff.
And this season, they're releasing them weekly.
Well, I thought they were.
Or is it just the one?
It's just the one, and they
That
go
makes
through
sense,
every
though.
episode, but it's over an hour long.
Yeah.
Because they've kind of already revealed a lot of stuff to us of how they make the show.
Right.
So that's was available starting Christmas Day. And then secondly, now we know... He's on the roof?
On the roof.
Oh my God, look at him. Oh, you guys can't see him, I guess. There's a freaking turkey on the roof. Hang on, I'm take a picture.
Dang, that's like when we grew up, there were peacocks in the neighborhood that we lived in. And so every once in a while, they would fly and land on the roof of our house, or our grandma lived next door on her roof. And our
Crazy.
dogs would be ticked off.
Oh yeah, they would just be going crazy. So other news is that as of right now, we know for sure that the Book of Boba Fett is its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes out December of this coming year, 2021.
Yes.
And we also know that The Mandalorian Season 3 will not be coming out until 2022, it looks like. But it could be early. So we could get Book of Boba Fett December. And I think it's going to be a 4-week miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And then in January or February, somewhere in that area is what I've heard, Mandalorian Season 3 will come out. So we still have to wait a little bit longer, but we get a whole miniseries just about Boba Fett in the meantime.
Lovely.
So, cool stuff. Also, we'd like to say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year.
Happy New y'all.
And that's kind of the motivation behind our idea here is one of the coolest things about the holidays is getting to hang out with family and friends, getting to spend time with loved ones. And so we thought, who are some loved ones from the Star Wars side of things? If Christmas, I guess it's Life Day in their world, but if Christmas was a thing, if Christmas was a thing in Star Wars, who would be hanging out on this day?
Yeah.
And so we decided to get our favorite duos of Star Wars. Do we have some honorable mentions first?
We do have some honorable mentions. So
The number one honorable mention is pretty obvious.
yeah, it would almost be unfair to include them. So we basically went through every Star Wars film and we decided what was probably the strongest or the most important duo for either the story or just what was seen.
Right.
And so R2 and 3PO, they're together forever and always.
Yeah. And when, in every George Lucas Star Wars movie, they're in every one.
Mm-hmm.
And the streak was kept alive through Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't make sense to have them in Solo. And I appreciate that they didn't force it.
Mm-hmm.
But episodes 1 through 9, they're in all of them, and they're in Rogue One. And so so far, I guess that's 10 out of 11 movies
Yeah.
that they're in so far.
It would just be an unfair advantage to them
Yeah.
to include them with the rest.
It would be wrong. And, when you look at Star Wars advertising, a lot of times they're the two that everyone kind of knows who they are, so they're there. And then we had a couple of pairs of bounty hunters that made the cut for honorable mentions, but not so special that they would stand out that far.
So one of those would have been Forlom and Zuckuss. You see them in Empire. They're part of the lineup on the Star Destroyer, which would have been Vader's Star Destroyer, which would have been the Executrix, I believe.
I think it's just Executor.
Okay.
But the weird thing to me is, I've always wondered this, they kind of get lumped together.
Oh, you know what? Tarkin, his is the Executrix.
Oh, there you go. You have Forlom and Zuckuss that are often lumped together, and in short stories since forever, they've been, here's two characters. But I wonder if that started because of the mislabeling of the toys back in the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, because if you guys don't know, when the action figures for Forlom and Zuckuss came out, the original ones, they were mislabeled. So Forlom was Zuckuss and Zuckuss Forlom.
Right.
And
there are people to this day that'll be like, no. And so I wonder if...
refer you to the original packaging.
Right. They have it in like an acrylic case. I wonder if that's the reason that they're kind of lumped together still is because they always have that weird tie.
Well,
and now,
there's that, and now we have the official
these,
story
right.
from a certain point of view for Empire's 40th anniversary.
And they were in Tales of the Bounty Hunters back in the day, in the 90s. I would like to say in the Bounty Hunter Wars, Forlom was not really in it, but Zuckuss played a pretty big part and was actually a partner with Boba Fett for a little bit.
Yeah. That's the interesting thing about bounty hunters in particular in the discussion that we're having right now is that you see a lot of them work together, but their partnerships are so fickle.
Right.
It's like any partnership that anybody would have with Moff Gideon, where he says, "I can guarantee you this one thing, and it'll be that I will act in my own best interest."
I like that he was upfront with that.
Yeah.
Because everybody else really feels that way.
Yeah.
He's just the one telling us about it.
Yeah.
So Forlom and Zuckuss are our first honorable mention. I guess second, but to me, R2 and C-3PO weren't even a honorable mention. They're just kind of the picture boys of Star Wars duos. So Forlom and Zuckuss, and then
there's one that I just wanted to have because I wanted to have it.
Yeah.
I wanted to have Embo and his Anuba Marok.
Yep. Very good team, and
a bounty hunter's best friend.
Bounty hunter's best friend is an Anuba.
Yep.
So pretty cool.
So well trained. You can tell they spend a lot of time together. All Embo has to do is snap, and the dog knows exactly what he wants.
It also stinks because we know for a fact that Embo survived past the reign of the Empire into that Aftermath trilogy.
Who knows how long an Anuba lives for, though?
But, the Anuba wasn't there.
And who knows how long it lives for, though?
Well, Dave Filoni said.
Well, he went to a nice farm, and he's helping people raise space chickens.
Right.
All right.
He's out there. We don't know.
That's the story I'm sticking with.
But interestingly enough, Dengar and Embo teamed up at that point, which I think that could be a pretty good partnership. Neither one of them is like the backstabby kind of guy.
I don't know. Dengar is a little bit, but Embo, I think, would be a good partner for anybody.
Yeah. Well, I think Embo would be a good partner, and I think that Dengar respects Embo. I think Dengar's the kind of guy that will stab you in the back if he's afraid that you will, so he'll get you first.
Yeah.
But I think when you're working with Embo, like you said, you know what you're working with.
He's got a pretty resilient code of honor, it seems.
So here's what we're going to do. You kind of mentioned this earlier, but we broke down every episode.
Yeah.
1 through 9, and also somewhere in the middle there is Rogue One and Solo. And we picked...
Right in the middle.
Yeah, exactly in the middle. We picked our favorite duos from there.
Yeah, either our favorite or one that is the most prominent
cohesive,
or
works best together,
most important to the story.
Right. And then we also went through and we got characters and duos from the Clone Wars and from Rebels and from The Mandalorian, and we didn't get any from Resistance because there's not really necessarily a big duo in that one. It's I guess Kaz, who's the main character, and I can't remember that character's name. He's kind of like the sillier character. I guess they're friends, but there's not really a group. I guess Kaz and like BB-8 could be it because BB-8's in the show and they work together. But we really focused on those other shows.
Yep.
So, getting right down to the
All right.
nitty-gritty.
Episode 1, if you didn't guess it,
What are we going to say?
I'm upset. But
It's Boss Nass and Jar Jar.
Captain Tarful?
Oh, Captain Tarples?
Oh, yeah, Tarful.
Yeah. So,
What are you doing back, Jaja? You signed big doodle this time. I only taught you a 10-foot pole.
oh, wow, he went full on Asian there.
I don't know. They're somewhere in the middle.
He has a cool little mustache, though.
Yeah, the
What do
The
you call those?
catfish
Tendrils, I
mustache.
guess? Hey, so what's
his
the deal with that?
I don't know,
does-
his accent's different, though.
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah, it is. You stop there. Why does he almost Neimoidian in
Yeah.
comparison to Jar Jar?
That's where I felt like I was going. That's why I stopped.
Why do you feel like he has those little catfish tails, but almost no other Gungans do?
Are you really going to point that out, and you're not going to talk about how Boss Nass is a completely other species? He's so fat, his whole mouth fell off.
Dude, yeah, he has no bill.
He has no bill at
It's
all,
just
dude.
part of his face. He became a dinosaur's character. Bum 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 dun 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. All right,
It's Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
we're gonna go forever.
Unlike us, the negotiations
Dude,
were short.
I would say though that arguably the best duo are the pod racer announcers, who are literally joined at the neck.
Yeah.
But Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, you have a great dynamic that it took a lifetime to develop.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things about their partnership is that
It wasn't natural
it wasn't natural.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the strongest types of partnerships is that
when it's earned.
it was intentionally worked towards. So if you haven't already, I highly recommend reading Master and Apprentice.
Yes.
It's one of the best Star Wars novels that I've read under the new canon.
Yep. And it's really cool because you start to see the development of their relationship.
Absolutely.
And you see, you know, it wasn't natural and it wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Obi-Wan wanted other masters or Obi-Wan met previous, you know, he meets like Rael Averross and he's like, this guy's
Yeah.
freaking cool. Why can't I be this guy's apprentice?
Yeah, well, and he had he struggled figuring out how Dooku would have been the master to both Qui-Gon and Rael, and still had a good relationship with both of them, or you know,
Yeah.
finding ways to communicate or just to interpret things in general.
It really is sad how great of a Jedi Dooku was before his fall.
Yeah,
To see how great of a teacher he was, because Rael Averross and Qui-Gon Jinn were both fantastic Jedi by the time everything was said and done.
well, yeah.
Or they're good men.
Rael was a terrible Jedi.
Okay, but he was
and
a good
Qui-Gon,
man.
according to the standards of the popular.
Okay,
Jedi
they would have
ideology.
been good Jedi under Luke's tutelage.
Yeah, let's say it that way.
Which is the better tutelage? As far as, like, Luke's Jedi Order is more complete as far as following the Force and less political and
I
things
could
like
get
that.
behind that. I could get behind
You know what I'm
that.
saying?
Yeah, for sure. But
okay.
A great partnership.
Yeah.
They were successful. They brought out the best of each other, and I think that's what's the most important thing of any partnership.
And I think that there was Qui-Gon has an amazing ability to respect an individual, even if he's, you know, obviously in charge of them or older than them or wiser than them. And I think that you really start to see that shine through Obi-Wan's personality.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, Obi-Wan seems like kind of like a hotshot, you know, wants to be an ace pilot, wants
Yeah.
to be all these other things. All the things that we see Anakin become,
Yeah.
Obi-Wan has little traces of that.
Yeah.
And I think
that's what
his
part of the-
attachment and relationship to Qui-Gon matures him out of those things.
Yeah, I think that's part of the exasperation that he has with Anakin as well, moving forward.
Oh my god, is this a turkey feather?
No, it looks like
Just
down.
kidding. Where's that guy? What if he's just looking through the roof at us?
Dude, I would be terrified. That'd be like the real life version to me. He's a direct descendant of a T-Rex, so
Oh, yeah.
it's Jurassic Park up in this mug.
With that nasty little whatever that is on his
Yeah.
face. Okay, so episode 2. This is
So-
a fun one.
Episode 2, you would think that it would be Anakin and Obi-Wan, but you'd be wrong.
Yeah, you'd be wrong. Because if you go back and watch episode 2, they hate each other.
Yeah, you can tell that Obi-Wan pretty much wants to slaughter Anakin at any given time.
And Anakin wants to slaughter everyone else.
Literally any interaction.
Yeah.
I didn't catch it as a kid because I was used to people talking to me like I was an idiot because that's how people talk to kids for some reason. But
Oh, dude, the whole time it's like, even
even when he's successful,
Yes,
he's
I was
like,
gonna say.
"Good shot, my young Padawan."
Yeah.
AKA, nice job this one time, dum-dum.
Yeah,
You know,
good
pretty-
job, stupid.
Pretty good decision for a moron.
Yeah, you're pretty fly for a white guy. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you're hitting your ceiling, which is my floor, you bum.
Yeah.
So Anakin, Obi-Wan,
And you really only see them work together for, I don't know, the first fifth of the movie. And
which is a
then-
constant argument.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, it's a constant argument that
And
costs
both of
Anakin
them
an arm.
end up mostly dead.
Yeah. I'm taking him now. And Dooku's like, gives them the space base.
Gives him the business.
So the episode 2 duo is actually
Jango and Boba.
Django and Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
feel
the
like it's
beginning.
appropriate.
It's
me and me. We'd
Yeah.
make a great partnership.
yeah, pretty much. It's cool because you have
You get the most laughs out of them.
you get a good couple of
Yeah, if I had a miniature
You get a
me,
strong
he would
yep.
think I was the funniest person in the world.
yeah.
Yeah.
You
Won't
get
be
to
seeing
see
him again.
It's the first time seeing them work together. Obviously, Boba's about 10 years old by then.
And the last.
Yeah, R.I.P. But
Worst
it's,
bring your son to work day of all time.
dude, bring your son to work day and leave without your head. Bring your son to work. Bring your dad home from work.
Yee.
But they have an awesome bond, and we've obviously seen that translate into how Boba carries himself in the Clone Wars,
Yes.
and even into the Mandalorian, which is like freaking 40 years later.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things about seeing Boba and getting to have a little bit of dialogue and seeing what really makes him tick as a character and seeing how influential his father was in
Yeah.
his life. You know, because he was young, but he really set Boba on the path that he was on for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm. I also like how in the Mandalorian finale of season 2, how when it matters to Boba for someone like the Mandalorian to understand, he's willing to open up a little bit and go, I want you to look at this and
Yeah.
show him the chain code. When Bo-Katan's like, you're a fake. I think it's cool that he has spent enough time building who he is on the inside and confidence that he's not going to let you walk over him.
Yeah.
Easy princess. But he doesn't feel like he has to be like, no.
Yeah,
like
he was
very
completely
defensive in the Clone
unperturbed.
Wars.
Yeah.
But I think he's like,
Well, he's also like 12 years old, 13 years old.
I'm not your brother. I'm Daniel Logan. So Django
long hair, you've got short hair. We're different.
Django and Boba Fett are the duo, great father-son team.
Yeah.
Cute little play date there in the asteroid field trying to kill a Jedi.
Yeah.
It
Memories.
was also cool that there's that one part that we glance over many times, but there's that one moment on the fight scene on Kamino where Django and Obi-Wan are neck and neck, and Boba just opens up with those Slave One cannons and really gives Obi-Wan the business. So, very cool team.
Absolutely.
Episode 3. This one's obvious.
This one's got to be the obvious pick.
So it's the beautiful, maturation. It's
Yeah.
hit its pinnacle.
I think this
The
one
brotherhood
is...
of
It's cool
Anakin
that
and Obi-Wan.
Yeah, Obi-Wan found his stride as the master, where Qui-Gon found,
Mm-hmm.
his stride as the master, and
Yeah.
they learned to appreciate each other. And it's funny because it's really their partnership only became good once it wasn't forced.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like once they were able to kind of be more peers than peer and superior, even though Obi-Wan at this point is the Jedi Master and has some sort of influence.
I think it's interesting also that maybe for Anakin, the partnership matured and hit its peak when the Clone Wars erupted and he had to work with other Jedi and he realized Obi-Wan's the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, maybe that and the fact that he was able to kind of express himself a little bit more in having responsibility as a leader.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think, especially as somebody who, even though I'm relatively young myself, has been responsible for kind of shaping a lot of people younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a really stressful one, sometimes if you give them responsibility or leadership, that really brings
They
those
have buy-in.
Yeah, it brings those strong traits out of them.
Yeah, definitely. So Obi-Wan and Anakin, for instance, when Anakin, you see a side of him right before he turns, but you really get to see his heart whenever he says, hey, I'm sorry for speaking out. I'm just so frustrated with the council lately, and Obi-Wan opens back up to Anakin and says, you're so wise, you're so powerful. You'll be a far greater Jedi than I could ever hope to be. Your time will come. Just be patient.
Yeah.
And he says, may the Force be with you. And then Obi-Wan says, goodbye, old friend.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a very beautiful thing there where...
Yeah, well, and it's cool because you see Anakin starting to get a little bit of security and a little bit of trust towards Obi-Wan, but you also see that Obi-Wan's mature enough now to admit kind of the discussion that Luke has with Yoda in The Last Jedi, where Yoda says, the burden of every master is watching his students surpass him. Mm-hmm. That Obi-Wan's
your job.
that Obi-Wan's reached that point where he's okay with it. That he's reached where he's supposed to be, and he's content.
Yep. Solo, a Star Wars story. This one actually happens more than once.
You'll probably never guess this one.
It's Han Solo and Chewbacca.
Han Solo and Chewbacca, the main character and the second main character.
Yeah. I would say that Beckett and Solo is a cool duo as well. Kind of an interesting... I wish that the movie could have been longer or maybe focused on that relationship a little bit more. I know that they had to set up the whole Corellia thing, so there were parts of the movie that needed to happen, but there was so much going on where it's like, let's include Lando, let's include L3, there's so much going on where they could have built up Beckett and Han's relationship a little bit more.
Yeah.
But Han and Chewie fighting to the death, making a plan, escaping, and then just from then on, literally showering together. So a really strong bond, and you really owe Chewie for how great this relationship ends up being.
Yeah. I think part of that is that, I don't know, Chewie's like the professional sidekick in a way, that he's had so much time to mature, because he, for the most part, is pretty much older than anybody he's around at any given time.
That's true.
And so
he is mature. He's 200 years old.
Yeah, he's just had that time he's a fine wine, man, and he's just there to make things happen.
Yeah. He's got a cool head. In all situations, and
except when he doesn't.
Yeah,
like when an alarm won't stop blaring.
Yeah. You put Han in carbonite, or you do loud noises around Chewbacca, and he just loses his crap.
Loud noises.
But yeah, Han and Chewie, it's as Timon says in Lion King 1.5, the beginning of a beautiful acquaintanceship. So really cool to see. I love that moment where it's classic Han and Chewie, where Chewie steps into the shower, no personal space, and then after that, they're on the lowered kind of walkway.
Well, what does Chewie have to be ashamed of?
Yeah, nothing.
He's literally never naked.
Yeah,
he's a never nude, like Tobias from Arrested Development.
If
you shaved off Chewbacca's fur, there'd be a pair of jean cutoffs.
He just walks in there, and then it's funny because right after that, they're hanging out outside, and they just hit it off, and he's like, "So what's your name?" And he's like, "Well, I'm gonna call you Chewie because I'm not saying all that." It's funny because they just really hit it off there. Yeah. So it's cool to see that. I also
backstory. Like the line, "You couldn't have waited."
Yeah.
We
couldn't have done this, I don't know, one at a time. Yeah. Okay, so after Solo, you have Rogue One. And Rogue One was pretty cut and dry for us.
Yeah. It's the only...
Your favorite, maybe, R2 or K2?
You kind of got to give it to R2.
Yeah.
He's the OG. But I think as a personality goes, I think K2 might be my favorite droid.
So... I'll let you handle this one.
Yeah, so K2 and Cassian, you kind of have to give it to them. They're the only established partnership. They die within minutes of each other, so that's sweet. But it's really, they work together from the beginning to the end. And I think that's really the only partnership that you see where they're, for the whole movie on each other's team. They've got an established history, and they're just doing whatever it takes to make things happen.
Can we also talk about how Cassian needs to get a fighting contract with the UFC immediately for being able to not get knocked the freak out by that backhand from K2SO when they're on Jeddah?
There's a fresh one where that came from.
Yeah, there's a fresh one if you mouth off again. Dude, he gives him it's a solid metal hand. Dude. And he gives him a strong backhand. He's probably 7.5 feet tall. Dude. So upward angled down across the cheek.
For real though. Well, and let's talk about...
That would break your orbital.
How freaking... Oh my God. Jin takes that stiff arm from him. He clotheslines her as she's walking out.
Oh, yeah.
You're being rescued.
Do not resist. Yeah, Cassian and K2, they have a beautiful... I love that Cassian is so guarded, and K2 is so... It's literally impossible for him to be... How come she gets a gun and I don't? Like, right off the bat. And Cassian is that guy that he just bottles everything up, and then all of a sudden, it's since he was 6 years old.
Yeah. In the words of John Mulaney, I'll just bottle all my emotions right here, and then one day, I'll die.
There's not even a middle where it explodes. You just keep it forever and then die.
and then you die.
So Cassian and K2 really balance each other out. And, you know, in all honesty, when it comes to the new series that are coming out with the Obi-Wan series, Boba Fett series, and the Acolyte and Rogue Squadron movie and all these other things that are coming out, I'm still excited, but I'm the least excited for the Cassian show.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me remember that we're going to get K2.
We're going to get some more K2.
And also, I'm always there for more Imperials, which means more troopers, which means more figures, and also maybe bounty hunters.
I never really cared for Dooku, even after having watched Clone Wars, until I got to read Dooku Jedi Lost, and I got to see some of what makes him tick. And I think that always gives me more respect for any character.
Yeah.
So, even though Cassian wasn't necessarily like my favorite, you know, I didn't not like him, but I wasn't naturally like, oh, I love this guy, you know.
Yeah.
It'll be cool for me to be able to kind of fill in the gaps and see what really makes him who he is.
Definitely. It's hard when you're on screen with someone like Krennic, who's such a large personality.
Yeah.
Or, and K2.
You know, you're going to have...
And then you have Tarkin and Vader in the mix.
Exactly.
It's just such a big cast. Okay, so that takes us back to the saga films. Episode 4, this is a repeater, but Han and Chewie.
Yeah, what are you going to do about it?
We were considering Luke and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And I think that ends up being a really, really big deal. Mm-hmm. But specifically in that movie, Han and Chewie have the strongest partnership because it's been established for 10 years. But we do want to give a shout out to Obi-Wan and Luke because it's kind of crazy. It's a one-sided partnership for 20 years.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan has all this investment and he can't show that. Mm-hmm. Imagine even if once he meets Luke, he can't be like, thank God I've waited 20 years for this. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting partnership that I think you really start to see bloom in episodes 5 and 6 and then even into the time after Return of the Jedi when Obi-Wan is still mentoring Luke through the Force.
Yeah.
I think you can't overshadow the whole use the Force blows up the first Death Star.
Absolutely. And I think another important partnership that goes through the original trilogy that you kind of get neglected because of the nature of the relationship, but Palpatine and Vader.
Dude, a powerhouse.
Yeah.
You know?
And then you have, you know, other miniature partnerships that aren't as well explored in the films, like Vader and Tarkin. You know, they work pretty well together.
Vader and Tarkin have a great partnership and a mutual respect.
Yeah.
And Vader and Boba Fett have a great respect for one another.
Yeah. I think that just speaks to the quality of the type of individuals that both Tarkin and Boba Fett are, that if you have somebody as exacting and as critical as Vader would be, or even Palpatine, that Palpatine would go through the great lengths to get Vader to work with them. You know what I mean? That they've basically, the most powerful person in the galaxy has recognized their value. You know what I mean? That's not anything to look upon lightly.
Yeah, and if you're listening or watching this and you're thinking, well, we only get to see Vader and Palpatine together in a set for 2 seconds in Return of the Jedi, and then Vader turns on him. If you're a reader or an audiobook person, Lords of the Sith.
It's fantastic.
I believe that's by Paul S. Kemp.
I think that's right.
But that's a really great book, and without getting like too crazy into it,
well, it's cool because it's going to explore some things you're familiar with. So it's going to be like the beginning of the rebellion. Part of the Clone Wars is spent on Ryloth,
right?
With the Twi'leks, and so
that's where, if you're a Rebels fan, Hera's dad, Cham Syndulla, that's where he is.
So he's going to be in that novel. There's going to be a connection to what you're familiar with. There's going to be Vader. There's going to be Palpatine, and it's really just about kind of Palpatine and Vader being forced to get their hands dirty in the war, so you get to see them in action.
Yeah, you get to see. People know what Vader's capable of, but so many people across the galaxy, literally trillions of people, think that Palpatine is just a politician and a fragile old man who an attack on his life left him scarred into form 20 years ago. And there's this moment, without getting too spoilery, where the Emperor just does some stuff.
There's a couple of those moments where even Vader is feeling pretty taxed, and Palpatine's just there, like, kind of cackling the whole
fresh
time.
as a daisy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in those moments, it's cool because everyone, even on their side, has to die except for the Royal Guards.
Yeah.
So you get a cool little miniature glimpse of the Royal Guards really know what the freak is up.
Yeah.
They really know what's going down.
Well, there's that, and then I think even Star Wars authors feel the need to maintain some of Palpatine's mystique in that.
And I appreciate that.
His power and what he is really capable of, or what he's truly thinking, a lot of the time is still very guarded. And I think this is
That's
one of the
what
best
made
inside looks we have.
that book, and that's what made the short story based on Palpatine and from a certain point of view, Disturbance.
Yeah.
That's what made those two stories so powerful. Was really those are the only things besides Plagueis, which doesn't really count anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two biggest insights into how does this guy work.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, he's playing like, you know how organs have different levels. He's playing organ levels of chess, and everybody else is playing Connect 4.
Right.
And I really do think that Palpatine, eventually we'll do a whole episode about Palps, because he is so, even though we know he's powerful, as a character, he is so underrated by Star Wars fans.
I agree.
So,
but anyway, so those are, some of our more honorable mentions towards the original trilogy. But in episode 4,
Han and
we
Chewie.
focused on Han and Chewie.
Episode 5, this is kind of an interesting one.
Yeah.
We could have gone Han and Chewie again.
Mm-hmm.
We could have gone Han and Leia.
Yeah.
We could have gone, I fought a little bit for Boba Fett and Darth Vader, because ultimately they do win that second half of that movie. But the most important partnership...
Yeah, by far and away, the most important partnership here is Luke and Yoda.
Yep.
And I think it's also important, worth noting, that we had explored the Luke and Obi-Wan partnership for Star Wars, the original, and then it was really that relationship that began the catalyst for this relationship, that he would be the reason that Yoda would be able to get in contact with Luke, because Yoda was so cut off for the most part that it really took that middle person who's able to kind of manipulate and discuss things without making waves in the living force.
Yeah, absolutely. So Luke and Yoda have a very strong partnership, and it's very much in its infancy whenever we have them in episode 5. But it's so, you have Luke, who is a lot like Anakin, and he just is in such a rush, not just to help Han and Leia, but just in life. Everything needs to happen right now. Kind of like what we see a little bit of Ezra Bridger, like that in Rebels. But Yoda is so, not at first, but he grows to be so patient with Luke. And
when you see that, you can kind of get the sense from the movie if you read into it a lot. And even though we're trying to rank based on just the movies themselves, it's really hard to kind of separate the knowledge that you have from the books.
Right.
But I think it's very cool that not only does Luke learn a lot from his relationship with Yoda, but Yoda learns still even more from his relationship with Luke. That he learns patience towards Luke when he starts to see that there are things that Anakin would have been very frustrated by that Luke still had patience for, or that Luke, even though he was very much Anakin's son, still retains some of his mom's characteristics of diplomacy and certainly not as much as Leia, but there was something in him that
the ability
was
to listen and to hear and to wait, which is, it's crazy because Padme would have made a far greater Jedi than Anakin as far as just
her dedication
and her, just like who she, not midichlorians obviously, but like give them the equal amount of power. And Padme has the temperament, I guess is the word I was looking for. And Yoda really starts to see into, and that's in a certain point of view of one of the greater stories, is that Yoda really starts to see the Padme in Luke that balances out the Anakin and Luke, and maybe this kid is the hope that we need.
And I think it's cool to explore the importance of the relationship, not just for Luke's sake, because Yoda is the oldest Jedi we've ever encountered, and everybody thinks of him as the wisest Jedi, and it's cool to see that he's become kind of jaded, from being cut off for so long, especially on the tail end of a lot of failure, and he's just tired and
we also don't
even
know
isolated, but
we don't know enough about this time span, but we just know specifically already from artwork that Yoda was alive and well and in his prime during the High Republic, which is called the High Republic for a reason.
Yeah.
And we know from the prequels that the Jedi are in the middle of whatever is going on with the Republic. And so because of that, imagine how much more of a failure. It's not like you were it's not like you were the coach that was brought in to coach a sucky team and it keeps sucking and you're like, I don't know what's wrong. The organization is terrible.
Yeah.
It's, you were handed, the coaching of, this great team, and over time you saw it decline and then eventually completely collapse, and then you get to sit by yourself and think about it for 20 years.
Yep.
No wonder he's jaded. No wonder he's frustrated and old and cranky.
He's kind of like re-given some of his former responsibility and former life in the form of having a new Padawan.
Yep.
And
Willing to work, willing to
how important
to
that is for him.
relearn. It's funny because he tells Luke, "You must unlearn what you have learned."
Mm-hmm.
But there's part of me that really does feel like he's talking to himself at the same time. And it's interesting though, because at the end of the day, again, Luke by the end of Jedi is still the more complete Jedi as far as his connection to the Force and his willingness to give instead of take.
Well, and I heard recently someone had said that there's no zealot like a convert. Like, and I've said that kind of in about like, you know, religious exploration, that someone who is brought over to that religion as an adult is typically more
Stronger.
who feels more strongly about it, or is more vehement or more zealous about those things because they're conscious decisions they
willing
made.
to study, willing to dig into it, and not just, well, it's always what I've known.
And I think Luke, having had that healthy ability to explore who is as an individual, and then kind of see the world without what Qui-Gon would have described as the blinders of the Jedi, being put in the actual center of the galaxy, you know, and thinking of the regular folks as the exception.
Yeah.
I think that's what really enabled him to kind of bring balance to the Force in the aspects of seeing the Force's role in everyday life, as opposed to just the kind of getting lost on the details for the sake of the bigger picture that I think the Jedi of the New Republic, or I guess the old New Republic, would have been.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Luke he hits the sweet spot there. So a very
anyway,
powerful
we can talk
relationship.
about that forever. And I think it would be cool to do a Yoda exploration episode a little bit further down the road once we get some new High Republic material.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see kind of full circle of what he looked, you know, his life. Him and Palpatine seem to be two sides of a coin, you know? Okay, we're to the last of the original trilogy, episode 6.
This one might come as a little bit of a surprise, but I think we can justify it.
Yeah, Han and Leia.
Han and Leia.
Their chemistry and the romance is probably stronger in Empire Strikes Back, but you really see the culmination of their relationship and come to fruition in episode 6.
Yeah, I think it's very much like we've discussed in other partnerships, in that you know, you see them working together but at odds, where there's still a lot of confrontation up until the point where they're in Jedi and they've kind of reunited, and you know, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and et cetera.
It's funny because you know, you also start to see you get to see Leia feeling and acting a little bit more like a scoundrel in episode 6, and then you get to see Han have a little bit more of a level head, and they're still true to themselves.
Yeah.
But it's the beautiful part of any relationship, whether it's a friend or a spouse or a, you know, sibling or whatever, is that a healthy relationship, you still keep your own identity, but you take on the traits of the other person, and that's what really helps you work better together.
I think that they're certainly the epitome of opposites attract.
Right.
You know what I mean? That they're
Han's like, what? It's clean. Leia's wearing like a spotless white gown, and Han's like,
reminds me of
it's a pit stain. Whoop, no big
you
deal.
ever watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yeah.
So there's an episode where Jake and Amy, they're discussing who's going to move in with who, and Jake only has one towel in his apartment, and he's
That's
like,
Han Solo.
and he was like, and it was there when I moved in, and she tried to set it on fire, and she's like, why won't it light? And he's like, because it never fully dries. It's kind of like that.
Absolutely Han Solo. There's a.
I mean, you live with a Wookiee, you're gonna have some.
You're gonna pick up Wookiee tendencies.
Yeah, you're gonna. Cleanliness is gonna be a little.
You're
less...
probably gonna get out of the shower, do one of these, and go about your day. It's funny also because there's in that book, Last Shot by Daniel Jose Older, that kind of goes back and forth in different parts of the timeline. One of the parts of the timeline is newly married Han and Leia and freshly out of the womb Ben Solo, and Lando's coming around, and you have Han, who's like, he's trying to turn on a movie for Ben, but Ben won't like stop fussing, and so he's like, Leia, you gonna help me with, you know, and so she's, you know, obviously she's always like ready to perform. She's, you know, got all her crap together. And then there's one point where Lando's like, here's a birthday present for Ben, and it's a freaking blaster, and I can't remember, I think it's their nurse story. It's like, this is not a suitable present for a young child. And
Yeah.
Lando's like, give it to him later. It's just so funny it's such a dude and his friend, like,
Yeah.
trying to raise a kid. But cool story.
Man.
The gun that Lando gives him is
Yeah.
the gun that Ben is using at the end of Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, that was a
So
cool
that's fun.
confirmation.
Yeah,
I
that was
remember
really
you were
cool.
very excited to find that out.
I was like, he's got the gun.
He's got a gun!
Hasbro, come on.
Yeah, that'd be very cool.
Vintage collection.
But yeah, I think that's certainly a duo worth exploring, and one that I think maybe doesn't really get enough love, especially when we look at they're kind of together but kind of not in the sequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I think because most of the focus for George Lucas for sure, and then I think for the viewer most of the time is going to be on the Vader-Luke duo, which we also thought about.
Yeah.
But that's the relationship we're working towards that, especially after the bombshell in Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very easy to ignore how well Luke or Han and Leia work together on Endor itself.
Yeah, it's
on the
when you
portion
really
of
think
Endor.
about that, they cannot work together at all
Mm-hmm.
in A New Hope. And in Empire, they're only working together because Hoth is falling down around them. And Han's like, let's go, and just drags her onto the Millennium Falcon. And they happen to work together until Han gets put into a deep freeze and, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems like Jedi is the one where it's like, we're working together.
Mm-hmm.
We know we care for one another. Let's just open up about that, and let's just be honest with one another. And you can see how much of a powerhouse they are. And there's that moment where, Han's usually the one that's like, gotcha, it's a second blaster.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that moment on Endor where they're at the shield gate and they're trying to break in to take down the shield, and they're dead to rights, and Han's like this, and Leia has an extra gun, and he says, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I know. And it's like, aha!
Yeah.
Like it's that beautiful, like I was saying earlier, where they're taking parts of one another. So that's a really cool moment.
I think it's funny that it all bleeds together because it's written so tight knit. But the Heir to the Empire series, when Han thinks he might lose Leia, and Tim Zahn's kind of exploring how much that moment really made him realize how much he loved her, that that there were things that she was really capable of, and that that was just one of the critical moments in that exploration of that partnership as well.
Yeah, very cool moment.
All right, moving right along to the sequel trilogy.
All right, a lot of Rey. All right, so just buckle down.
Just stick with us here.
I like Rey. I'm just saying, for those of you who are haters at home,
let's just be honest with ourselves. Rey gets around in the sequel trilogy. Try and fault
as far
my
as
logic.
friendships go, okay. Okay.
And other things.
And so episode 7, the strongest partnership and the funnest partnership. I thought this was a very fun partnership, friendship, love, whatever you want to call it. Rey and Finn. Stop taking my hand.
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny.
Racist.
And Rey and Finn work together really well, and they both have this mysteriousness where they don't really know what the past really holds. They know that they've been wherever they've been for as long as they can remember, but there's something right on the cusp of their mind before that they don't know what it is, but they both know that there's something greater out there.
Yeah, the natural fellowship of
The Ring.
orphans.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a kinship there
Like Mike, all the orphans, they work so well together.
Yeah, and it's interesting because now we know in retrospect that...
Or Han and Luke.
Yeah, very much. I think now in
And
retrospect we know that...
Chewie, maybe? Obi-Wan? All the Jedi?
they're not orphans, though.
In spirit?
I think that in retrospect we realize now that Rey has such a strong pull to the Force, and we think, now Finn also has that feeling.
Well, especially when we were watching anybody, really, who was excited for The Force Awakens to come out, when they were watching
We really
it for the
felt like
first time.
Finn was the Jedi.
That's how it was shaped, man. And I feel like I bring it up a lot, but it's worth remembering that it was very much skewed to intentionally make it look like Finn was the Force-sensitive one.
Yep, totally. And what's kind of sad is that John Boyega recently had an interview where he said he felt like maybe he was used as like a, maybe bring in the race thing into it, or bring in, where it's like, hey, look at this, it's something new and different, and then they didn't really explore it. And I think part of that is, I think J.J. Abrams did a great job, and I loved Episode 7. But I think, and this is something that we've talked about before, but J.J. does such a great job of setting you up and being like, here's some cool ideas. But I feel like he's like, this is my job. My job's not Episode 8. You know what I mean? And so I think Finn really, of any character, got the short end of the stick when it came to the sequel trilogy falling off after The Force Awakens. Because me personally, a lot of people prefer Poe to Finn, but I prefer Finn, actually. I really like John Boyega. I loved, and maybe part of that was John's energy leading up to The Force Awakens, because he felt like I was watching a normal dude geek out over getting to be in Star Wars, and I feel like as of now, as just a person, especially towards Star Wars, I feel like he's a little jaded, and that makes me sad, and I feel like he got the short end of the stick. I would have loved... was it cool to see Kylo come back to the light? Absolutely. And I was in love with that character, and Adam Driver did an amazing job, and I'm glad that he's not in, I don't know, I guess I'm thinking in real world terms, so I'm like, I don't want him to go to hell, but I guess it would have been cool to see Rey and Finn grow together in the Force if Rey was going to be a Force user anyway.
Yeah.
It would have been really cool for them to grow together and take on the supervillain Kylo Ren.
Yeah, I think the only problem with that would have been like too much coincidence for such, you know what I mean? Like, people were already pissed off about Rey being powerful enough in the Force to do that kind of stuff. Now we have two people that just happen to both be on Jakku, that both happen to be like sleeper agents for the light side of the Force. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, I think, one, we live in the internet age where everybody complains about everything.
Right.
Like, what is the percentage chance?
And I'm not saying that would be my point
Right.
of view.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
saying
I
that
know.
that would be the obvious flaw.
Yeah, I guess I'm being the challenger of that point of view and being the devil's advocate of pretty freaking crazy that they landed on Tatooine in Episode 1 and met Anakin. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I thought Rey and Finn were a great pair, and I wish we could have gotten more of them like we saw them in Episode 7. Episode 8. This one actually starts pretty early in the movie. You've got General Hux and his mother.
And his mother-in-law.
No, General Hugs from his mom. No, so that was kind of a joke, but
Ironic that you make that joke, seeing as how much you hate that joke.
I do dislike that joke, but I thought it would be funny to make on the air. But really, the partnership that really grows the most here, I would say, is Luke and Rey.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that we would be able to discuss this partnership in the middle film of this trilogy and how important Rey was for bringing Luke back around after his failures as a Jedi, where Luke was that same important person for Yoda.
Absolutely.
But definitely an important partnership. It's the one that really everybody only cared about this leading into The Force Awakens, but we only got a little tidbit of it. And then, it finally came around for The Force Awakens, or The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just one that everybody was so freaking excited to finally see Luke again. And
Dude, for real.
to see him as a master Jedi.
And to really see him finally at the very end come into his own as far as his mental state being kind of closer to where it needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
It does make me sad. For instance, seeing the Mandalorian finale and seeing how powerful Luke was in the Force, I feel like I don't want anybody to retcon the sequels. I don't want to... You start to inflate the value of the movies when you do that, Like, when you talk about, hey, have you ever seen The Incredible Hulk? And everybody's like, which one? The good one or the bad one? The one with the dogs? Like, and it's because it's that franchise, Marvel, even before Disney was willing to be like, all right, let's redo it. Mm-hmm. And
well, and
it's
part
one
of that,
thing if you do it all the time.
The convenience of that is that there's a multiverse, so they could just say it's a different one.
Right, right. Star Wars can't afford that. It would feel cheap if they started to be like, no, this is a different Luke.
Yeah.
But I was listening to, I was fixing my Christmas lights the other day, and I was listening to Legacy of the Force novel, and there's a bad character that does something similar to the Force projection that Luke does. And I understand that the greater distance probably causes more strain, but this character had like 5 Force presences that they were projecting within, a few acres of space, I would say. And it was like, until the actual individual was attacked and had to withdraw within themselves and stop the projections. I just feel like there's a gap, and maybe it's because he cut himself off from the Force for a while or something. I still don't feel like, even at the end of The Last Jedi, we got the Luke that I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah. The Luke that... Because there's always been the question, even since the 90s when Tim Zahn's writing the Heir to the Empire series, and we have Drew Sabayoth, who... through Captain Pelion, we're wondering, what makes a Master Jedi? What's the difference? How would he be able to assume the title of Master Jedi? And I think that's a question that a lot of people had, because even in the prequel trilogy, we didn't have a very clear definition of what it meant to go from Jedi Knight to Jedi Master.
Right. We kind of understand that there are trials to
Right.
get to your knighthood, but then between episodes 2 and 3,
Yeah.
even when we had a million hours of Clone Wars, there was never a moment that was like, now you've done this,
Right.
Obi-Wan, and now you're a master. That never happens.
And I was really excited for that, and we didn't get it, but that's okay. And I think everybody just... There's this, like with Palpatine, there's this mystique and this expectation that surrounds the title of Master Jedi, and then I think even one more step above to go to Grand Master Jedi, and that's what we were expecting from Luke, and you know what I mean? It was just kind of like we didn't get the satisfaction of knowing those things.
I would have liked to have seen Luke do all the acrobatics of you can't touch me, nah, 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 nah. But then it would have been cool to actually watch him engage Kylo, who we've seen just destroy folks. And I think that, and part of this is probably from having different directors that have different ideas and different whatever.
Yeah.
But it would have been cool to see Kylo be a little bit more violent and give him some scenes. If you give him a scene like we saw Vader do in Rogue One, then we understand what he's capable of. Even like the Galaxy of Adventures little cartoon, where the guy that does Zuko for Last Airbender is the narrator. And it's like, in a Galaxy of Adventures, Kylo Ren. It would have been cool to see him really like just cut people down and wade through some folks. And then once he gets to Luke does the dodgeball, moves, but then is like, okay, let's engage then. And it would have been really cool to see him dominate a character like Kylo Ren. And then if he wants to disappear, that's his prerogative. He's the Grand Master.
Yeah.
But Luke and Rey, it's really cool because they're so equally beneficial.
Yeah.
She really benefits him, and he really benefits her as well. So that's episode 8. Episode 9 is one of my favorites.
Yeah, Rey and Kylo. And I think this is the only instance in all of Star Wars where we have the term Force dyad.
Yeah.
Even between... I don't think we really hear it necessarily tying Palpatine and Vader or Anakin together. We don't hear it with really anybody. So it's important, I think, just for the exploration of the idea of the cosmic and living force to understand what that means. And, it's like the shared cores between Harry and Voldemort's wands, you know what I mean? It's just such a rare instance. And I would like to explore that idea more, but for the sake of this unique and incredibly powerful partnership, I don't think there's any way to get around the fact that this is the most important duo for episode 9.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting that Kylo's the only character we ever see running from the light. And we still, even with the Rise of Kylo Ren comic, we never understood where that came from.
Yeah.
By that comic coming out, we've already have an established relationship with Snoke. We already have an established track down to the dark side, things like that. We still haven't unpacked what Ben saw that made him feel like the dark is the way to go and it's the only way to make things happen.
Well, and it's like they're the perfect living partnership of the yin and yang. You know what I mean? One's the light with the core
Rey
of dark.
really has the pull to the dark.
And then one's the dark with the core of light.
Yeah. It's really powerful. And I do love that when Rey chooses, I'm not going to kill you, but I'm also going to defend myself. And then you have Ben, who is, I'm going to accept who I really am. I'm Ben Solo. That's when they're at their strongest, and still not strong enough to beat Palpatine. He's just a bad mamma jamma. But Rey and Kylo, very powerful duo. It was really cool because my wife, growing up, her dad loved Star Wars, but not at the level that we love it. And when me and Macy got married, it was like, yeah, Star Wars. And then now, we walk into the house that we own, and when we bought it, was a converted garage that she let me have all my Star Wars stuff in. And she walks in and she's like, there's a lot of things in here. And she really knows how much of a deep love I have for it. And I think one of the coolest things about Rey and Ben, Kylo, whatever you want to call him's relationship, was watching her, my wife, develop like, hey, they had to fight for one another. It was cool to watch her get to have that Star Wars experience.
Yeah.
So that does it for the official films. And now, really quickly, we'll move on to Clone Wars, Rebels, and The Mandalorian. How are we on time? We okay?
We're going a little long, so
Okay.
we'll kind of cut through these.
All right, so Clone Wars, we want to do a light side and a dark side. Obi-Wan and Anakin is the obvious choice.
Yeah.
But we already had that, and
Yeah.
we wanted to give some love to a really fan-favorite character that is a big part of the Star Wars story.
It's hard to even think about the Clone Wars without acknowledging the importance of the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka.
Absolutely.
Literally from start to finish, this is pretty much the focus because we've talked about it so much today, but the role that an apprentice has in the life of a master.
And their maturation.
Yeah, it's impossible to overlook how important that was to the formation of Anakin's character.
Yep. So that's a really powerful one. And on the dark side of the coin, only once in the history of his rise and fall did Palpatine see things were threatened enough to his plan that he got off his high horse and went and fixed the issue.
Got his hands dirty.
And this is the brotherhood and partnership between Darth Maul and Savage Opress.
Yeah, you have one that is incredibly powerful, but his power mostly lies in his cunning. And then you have one that is just this side of vegetation, but he has raw power.
You talking about his wits?
Yeah. Savage is not at all there mentally, but he's got raw power.
And Savage, his is a tragedy case too.
Mm-hmm.
Really a kind-hearted person at heart, trying to defend
right. He
his
basically
clan. And was
volunteered his tribute.
Yeah, to protect his clan, and then was imbued with dark side energies.
Commenced the shafting for the rest of his
Savage Opress
life.
is a dark side dark trooper.
Yeah.
He's just been botched. He's like almost like a Grievous character in a way. But their partnership was so powerful and so overwhelming. When you can take over the Mandalorians, the Black Sun, the Hutts.
Oh yeah.
And
not
everything.
only just be able to naturally overtake them, but to be able to bring them together and
also manage them.
Yeah,
because a lot of people
important.
can go. It's obviously here's my 12th sports analogy of the day, but there's tons of people who are like, hey, we'll get together and we're the two best players and we'll get together and make it super team or whatever. And a lot of times it doesn't necessarily pan out right away.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to get together, take over these huge conglomerates that have been around for God knows how long, and legitimately rule them.
Well, and look at
and
the first...
only be overthrown when freaking Darth Sidious says you have become a rival. He never says that to anyone else.
Yeah.
There's been a disturbance, but a disturbance is like, this is inconvenient. I should cut this off, before it gets a big deal.
Tarkin.
Yeah, but for you to be a rival, and I will put on my hands and fix my own plumbing because I don't trust anybody else to fix it.
And get his second lightsaber out of the statue, which is in 500 Republica, and I imagine not very easy to retrieve.
Exactly. So, Maul and Savage, super underrated. And
By the way,
cool.
that statue was introduced in Plagueis and recanonized in the novel Tarkin.
Yep. Super cool. All right. Rebels, you have two of them. You have Hera and Kanan.
I think that's an important partnership. I think it's probably the the strongest partnership.
Yeah.
I'd say. The
strongest partnership, and again, they balance one another out.
Mm-hmm.
Really, Hera balances out Kanan, and Kanan has a lightsaber. And then, obviously, the master and apprentice partnership of Kanan and Ezra.
Yeah.
Ezra, the orphan, who has the bigger heart.
Look at that.
Kanan, the orphan, who is kind of been burned before, and similar to and a third time to death. So you have very much a Luke and Yoda situation where Ezra, who has the right heart but no training, brings the best out of Kanan.
Yeah.
It's a smaller scale relationship, but that moment where Kanan has that Force vision where if Ezra to succeed, you need to train him. Therefore, here's your knighthood. Very, very cool moment.
Yeah. Also, worth mentioning is the brief partnership between Ezra and Maul.
Yes.
I feel like Maul kind of rounds out Ezra a little bit.
Very, very potentially powerful, but Ezra ends up doing the right thing, much to my chagrin. Okay, finally, this one's on the brain. There are 3 partnerships we want to mention from The Mandalorian. The most powerful, the most impactful, and the one that drives the show, and the one that we're not really sure how the freak we're going to live without it, is Din Djarin, the Mandalorian,
And Grogu.
Yeah. Once again, that moment of Mandalorian, Din Djarin really reminds me of an episode 4 Han Solo, where it's I'm just doing my thing, and Grogu is the Rebel Alliance that brings the best out of Din Djarin.
Certainly, yeah.
Brings the best to the forefront, to the surface.
Yeah, and if you want more on this, we've got tons
a
of
billion
Mando
Mandalorian
content.
things. Okay, secondly, Boba Fett and Fennec Shand.
If you believe it, I was the one who suggested this partnership. Didn't even occur to Josiah, the Mandalorian fan.
It's true. The third partnership is the one that I was excited about.
Yeah.
2 Mandalorians walk in a bar.
Yeah, right?
It's Din Djarin and Boba Fett.
Din Djarin and Boba Fett.
Pretty
unstoppable as a duo.
Yeah, I love... And it sucks that we never really get to see them really fight together against anybody.
Yeah.
But a cool partnership. A lot of people were surprised. I wasn't surprised when Boba Fett kept to his word. Now, what that looks like going forward now that things are fixed, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there is an honor amongst them. They're both Mandalorians. It does mean a lot to Boba Fett that the Mandalorian returned his armor to him. That's a big, big deal. So I can see them...
Big.
Yeah. Pick. I can see them lasting. But when they walk into that bar looking for Bo-Katan, oh my god, it's so freaking sick. And then when Bo keeps having that stupid attitude she has, and Boba Fett goes, we don't need these 2. I was like, give it to him, Boba!
We don't need them.
So that was really
Who
cool.
needs them? Not me.
Not me either. They literally didn't even need them.
It really didn't help that much.
Right. And now she's presenting a freaking problem for next season.
Yeah, should have just killed her.
What if Din Djarin kills her and then just hands over the Darksaber to Boba and he's like, I can accept it. So, duos. It's a big part of the Star Wars universe, and it's a big part of everyday life. We're a duo.
Yeah.
And
dynamic even.
Yeah. A duo. American Tail. But we say all that to say the importance of relationship and family and friends. And so spend these days with your family and your close friends and your relatives, whether that's in person or via the interwebs. Be kind to one another going in after this Christmas into this next new year. And we pray and hope that 2021 is far greater than 2020 has been. And so that's our episode for the week. We want to say, may the Force be with you.
And on that note, remember, the only family we have here is me.
We'll see you next week.